This presentation examines the difficulties that international students in Australia face in developing belongingness in Australian cross-cultural communities through symbolic interactionism. Thus, it will introduce the given social concern, discuss four unique concepts of symbolic interactionism, such as meaning, interpretation, the social self, and definition of the situation, and examine the causation of the social issue of how foreign students become outsiders in Australia. A significant proportion of international students in Australia feel lack of belongingness in the Australian community. Many experts argue that the sense of social connectedness is notably important for individuals' social well-being. Recent research, however, reported that the overall social well-being of international students has declined. This is because they experience difficulties in approaching various communities at school and become socially isolated in the classes. Given this social issue, symbolic interactionism can provide several explanations of the phenomenon through four different concepts of the perspective. Furthermore, those approaches indicate four aspects of causes, such as English level, increased student visa application fees, discrimination, and forming friendship circles, mainly with friends who share their similar cultures. Symbolic interactionism is one of the sociological frameworks that concentrate on the causations of interactions between peoples. Symbolic interactionism, therefore, is interested in shared symbols in our everyday micro-interaction like conversations with family, text messages with peers, and even the pictures on the social media. Moving on to four concepts, symbolic interactionists define meaning as something that is constructed through interactions. Therefore, every item, action, and phenomenon cannot have fixed or eternal definitions in its perspective. This view contrasts with other perspectives. Psychology, for example, assumes meaning as personally identifiable information shaped by emotions and thoughts on the objects. Accordingly, since several lenses are identifying meaning differently, definitions can differ based on the interactions of groups or society. The second concept of symbolic interactionism, interpretation, refers to a subjective process of making sense of symbols on something and learning how to react. Countless symbols and signs naturally reach our minds and are interpreted while repeating the internal conversation. Then people eventually build misunderstanding or personal faith as humans interact with other people every single time. For example, when friends are chatting without oneself, when friends are chatting without oneself may be interpreted as bullying, which can change the person's attitude toward them. This concept involves the idea that each individual and society cannot be regarded as separate. Moreover, the idea also affects how individuals build their own identity. Building on this, the social self, which differentiates others and self, is constructed with endless interactions and interpretations since people are born. It shares a similar idea with the concepts of interpretation and is grounded in the interpretive process, which individuals internalize and identify symbols from interactions with the generalized other, informing their sense of self. For instance, if a professional singer sold fewer tickets for the concert than expectation, the singer may interpret them itself as an unpopular or poor vocal skilled singer. In addition, this concept is crucial because sense of self significantly affects how individuals treat themselves and behave. Finally, the concept of definition of the situation suggests that individuals' behaviors are shaped by their interpretation of the context and their socially identified sense of self. Definition of the situation emphasizes the outputs of the interpretive process and examines how individuals frame and respond to situation based on internalized opinion, belief, and attitude that were constructed during interpretation. Thus, these concepts are connected, showing how people interpret and respond to situations. For this reason, if new members of a study group define themselves as strangers, symbolic interactionists could predict that they will participate objectively until get used to it. As a conclusion, these concepts illustrate application of symbolic interactionism in every social life. When perceiving the issue through the lenses of meaning in symbolic interactionism, it suggests that English proficiency comes to symbolize confidence among international students. According to Mufate et al., international students could be anxious in their first year due to unfamiliarity of speaking in English. This is because fluency in English allows more opportunities to make friends and express themselves. However, in case of students with poor English skills, they might be frustrated because they cannot properly express or argue when struggling with dissatisfaction on something. As a result, those individuals might be depressed, begin to avoid conversation in English, and symbolize the courage is determined by the level of proficiency of English. Therefore, one cause is oppression of agency caused by their own symbolization. Observing the social issue via the interpretational angle of symbolic interactionism, institutional cause is evident, which numerous international students interpret the Australian government as demanding more money for student visa rather than welcoming them. Since international student visa application fees have increased, the access is prone to open for wealthy students, and students in lower class could perceive that the government is unwilling them. Therefore, however, the reason for increase of the fees is rational. Students increasingly face financially weakened situations on the first few months in Australia, and that is why their first impact on the society would be they are unwanted. In terms of constructing the social self, racism experienced in Australia mainly shapes the international students' identities as stranger and foreigner. Research conducted in 2005 announced over 50% of the foreign students were ever discriminated. Recent research also revealed that discriminative behaviors are still reported in Australia, and this is impactful mentally and academically in negative ways. While individuals are told, go back to your country, they may lose sense of belongingness and clarify themselves as outsider. Additionally, their own ethnical groups are also interpreted as the same way. Continuing on this, the concept of definition of the situation explains why students from overseas tend to make friendships with peers who share their similar cultural backgrounds. Thereby, phenomenon solidifies avoiding diverse integration. According to Gomes, many Asian international students disclose that their friend groups consist of co-national peers, which is described as parallelization. I'm sorry. This tendency is shaped by earlier experiences of isolation and exclusion that are discussed forehead. Generally, people feel more comfortable with peers speaking in same language and in shared ethnicity because it is much easier to understand each other. As a result, international students often shape the parallelized society in their classes, which reduces their engagement in more multicultural interactions. In conclusion, this essay has examined why many international students feel difficult in engaging in Australia via several lenses of symbolic interactionism. By applying the four key concepts, meaning, interpretation, the social self, and the definition of the situation, it becomes clear that this issue is constructed socially through everyday interactions. Shared meaning tells fluency in English became meaning of courage toward diverse community among foreign students. Institutional policies such as increased visa fees and repeated discrimination contributed their negative interpretation on the society and themselves. Moreover, those causes eventually lead the students defining the situation as having same ethnicity friendship circle, which reinforces parallel society. And here are my references and citations. Thank you.